but this is the 5th anniversary of us moving into this building. And we were on, you know, even though we paid $270,000 for it, it only took our group 3 years to pay that money. You know, so, and now we're looking to the future, and we hope before this year's out that the bay part will be extended almost to the property line and move that little building that's out there, and it'll have 4 back-in bay doors. So you can see how the equipment right now is all stacked in there in the warehouse part, and each one will have a truck and a boat behind it, or whatever, or a trailer, and command post to have its own door. So, and I'm sure we'll accomplish it with the help of everybody, you know, because we've been blessed by the citizens of Escambia County to donate as much as they do every year. It just amazes me that our door support people, when they go door to door, every week you see, you know, we ask for $35, $40 donation, and they come back with hundreds and $500 checks. So there's still a lot of good people in this county that support us, and I think they'd rather donate it than they had actually a taxing unit, or having to be, you know, supported through county or state taxes. And I think they can come out here and see that their money's been well spent. And without any ado, I want to introduce and turn it over and let Andy talk to us a little bit.
Thank you, Jim.
You gonna talk a little bit about how the dad started?
Yeah, what I'd like to do, first let me tell you that it's an honor. It's an honor. I mean, I was a 14-year-old kid and kind of followed, unfortunately, that motley crew that's sitting in the back rows back there. But it's phenomenal what you've been able to do in approaching the 50-year anniversary. And I think even the person today is just as responsible as the person in the beginning. And as I was driving down here yesterday, I was kind of reflecting, and I was thinking, everybody has a story to tell. Everybody has an experience. And I said, you know, you can capture it in a book, but fiction doesn't sell, because there's no way it can be real. People would look at it and say, that's got to be a fantasy, or that really couldn't have happened, but it did. And this rescue squad is an evolution of years and years of personal sacrifices. So what I did, I wanted to thank certainly my family growing up in the rescue world, and all the members of their families, because the task was just overwhelming and non-ending. So as I was putting this kind of thoughts together, I was reflecting back on what started all this. And most of you probably know, but if you didn't know, let me give you some background. Around 1960, they had 2 boys drowned. One was the sheriff's grandson, I believe it was, Emery, and then Mara. They were Escambia High School students. And my father was a civil defense director, which was kind of a slipshod, haphazard organization that they called civil defense. It really wasn't structured that much. But the sheriff called and said, you know, we've got 2 boys that are drowned. So he went out there to Lillian, Perdita Bay, and unfortunately it took a week, 2 weeks. I mean, nobody knew, and the other agencies came in and they all started to try to help, but it was completely disorganized. You know, it was chaos, to say the least. And I can remember being said, I swear this will never happen again. This will never happen again. There was such an outcry by Escambia County of Pensacola that these 2 boys were lost for a couple weeks in what seemed to be a non-threatening environment. Of course, they wasn't sure if they were in the water, if they weren't sure if they were on the land. Ken Robinson is here with us. He's not a card-carrying member per se, but Ken was one that got out of school and trudged through the swamps looking for his schoolmates. So Ken now lives across, ironically, from where it all started. And I can recall that the Navy was involved, and everybody was involved, but nothing was structured. Back then, everybody just kind of went their own way. So my father got with the Navy and Commander, or Chief Buckhannon, Buckhannon, and they formed this Escambia Search and Rescue. I say they pretty well put the organization together. And I can recall the following, and somewhere in my mind, I want to think there were somewhere between 500 and 1,000 members in the beginning. When we met on the conference room at the health department on Palafox, and it was full. I mean, there's people standing outside. People came from all around. There were hundreds of people that were participating. They just wanted to do something. And like I said, I was 14 years old, so I stood on the side there and kind of watched a lot of the confusion and conflict, but everybody wanted to do something. So it came down to who wants to do this and who wants to do that, and who can provide this and who can provide that. And that's basically how it got started. Through the years, in 1962, in the Cuban crisis, the Escambia Search and Rescue was recognized as probably the second rescue squad in the country. I think New York was first, because they had a lot more activities and exposure. But here was Escambia County. Well, the Cuban crisis, many of you probably don't know this, but President Kennedy called my father and he says, I need a representative to represent the southeastern United States. Could you amass your volunteers to participate? Because if you don't know or don't remember, we were about to go to war. The Cuban crisis was very real. And he says, I can bring the rescue squad as civil defense people if we need them. So as I lived out in Warrington, and I remember teletypes were in the living room, and the black limousines were in the driveway, and it was a busy, busy place right up until the finale. But the response was all predicated on the Escambia Search and Rescue as them being readily available to grab as volunteers should we become involved in a nuclear confrontation. So see, you got some deep roots as you lean back or look back. Also, as you know, we started a rescue squad. My father was told by the city, says, we needed somebody to be ambulance service. So we need an ambulance service in Pensacola. And my father said, well, I think I can get some people together. And they said, well, you got 72 hours. I mean, he was standing there looking at city council. So where do you think he went? Escambia Search and Rescue. I remember that we had CB radios, and we had Relay 1, which was in Cantonment. We had Relay 2 that was out on Pine Forest Road. And when you'd get a call, you'd get on the phone and call them, and you'd hear Relay 1 come on, and they'd call the ambulance. And it was a rescue squad. And then they would coordinate. So when you picked up a victim somewhere, you call one relay, and they would call the other relay, and the other relay, and it would filter all the way back to the office, and then they would call the hospital to say it was on the way. Escambia Search and Rescue was a catalyst group for a government ambulance service that eventually evolved into. So just through the years, it has just been phenomenal, the mainstay and the support that the group has offered. And I want everybody, if you would, when we get through, to introduce yourself and tell you what their role was in the beginning. It goes beyond, it pales to look at where we are today and where it came from. I had a conversation with Howard earlier, talk about all the rules and regulations. We didn't have rules and regulations. We just went out and did it. You know, I think it was what do they say, the necessity is the mother of all inventions. Well, we found immediately that you couldn't pull a body off the bottom with a hook and a rod and reel. That didn't work. So we decided, well, maybe we need drag hooks. And y'all can probably remember those god-awful looking monster hooks we used to pull bodies off the bottom.
Yeah, I made a few of them.
I mean, we didn't know what it was we didn't even know what a spear gun was, because everything we dealt with was, you know, rescue efforts or recovery type efforts. Unfortunately, a lot of this bunch sit back here, and I say this lovingly, thought my father was, walked on water